Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Leaf Colectivo. There's been a little bit of a hiatus over the holiday season. We've been busy, but we're back. Outside of my window, it's the lovely, gloomy British weather, which I'm sure Wes's weather is probably not as any better than mine. But yeah, welcome, Wes. Really good to be back.
Yeah,
Making
you're
your
not loving the
lovely.
gloomy. Your Costa Rican soul not loving the gloomy weather.
Now, but I have Costa
Straight
Rican
answer.
coffee. So I mean, I have to say, I got to go to Costa Rica this holiday season, and it has never been as perfect weather as it was this trip, and I missed it so much, and it took me back to my childhood. So yeah, I can't complain. I got probably a little bit more sunshine than you did. So and here we are, lovely February. So as we're recording this, it's the like second, third day of February. You're probably going to be seeing it in a little bit
I
later,
think
but I
pretty
don't think
pretty
the
sure
weather is
it's
going to be any better.
pretty sure it's the fourth day of February. Yeah,
Yeah,
you still got a bit of jet lag there, girl.
exactly. But yeah, no, really happy to be here. So over the last few episodes, we've been talking about conversion tracking. Why is it important? uh, why is probably the most important thing that people should be talking about, especially as the foundation, and especially as we move into this whole Andromeda, Jam, AI sort of world for performance marketing. But today, I wanted to focus our shot into what the landscape looks like for conversion tracking, because a lot of people, and we've seen this in a lot of the conversations we've been having, they think they've done it. They think like they set it up. And when we go and show our findings and the issues, they're all surprised because in their heads, it's been taken care of. So how do like, is that like a fair assessment, Wes, of the meetings you've been having as well? Because I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, conversion tracking is a checkbox that a lot of people has to go through, and unfortunately, a lot of people think of it like that, just a checkbox, and they get surprised when you walk them through an audit per se.
Yeah, I mean, generally the meetings that I'm having with brands about tracking, and it doesn't really matter the size of the brand. It could be, $1 billion global brand spending millions a month on paid media, or a startup spending £1,000 a month on paid media. The knowledge of how tracking works and what it does is just non-existent in the industry, really. And it doesn't really change. You could vice versa. You could have a startup who's really looked into tracking, and they've looked into it enough to know that it's just a total black box within a black box. Um, it's so opaque, even for really experienced software engineers. They're not experts in tracking, and then even if they're experts in tracking, they've got very, very, very little knowledge or no knowledge whatsoever of performance marketing. So how this piece of technology, or this system, this infrastructure, how it actually drives performance in ad accounts. We did the last episode on how it actually works, and I think now with things like Gem and the Andromeda updates from Meta, and previously just the way that PMAX and things like that were broad, data-driven, algorithmic bidding, just driving all performance, all targeting, all retargeting. It entirely comes from the conversion tracking on your website. So if you're leaving that to a free solution like Tag Manager, or the native free Meta and Google apps in Shopify or WooCom or something, um, you're in a really, really precarious position if you're spending a lot of money on ads. It'd be the equivalent of having a website and just getting someone to build it and then just like, yeah, leave it to me, thanks. I don't need you anymore, and just never monitoring it or paying attention to how it's working or the performance. So you would just never know brand in the right mind would ever do that. But that's exactly what they're doing with the tracking.
In all fairness, right? I mean, I feel like the the reason of being of those apps there are in no way, shape, or form meant to be an all-encompassing, you know, battle-tested solution. It's probably the least minimum solution that
I
anybody,
know,
you know, getting
but
started
Meta and
with
Google
could think
are
of.
actually pushing those apps in the
That is
market,
true.
saying saying use these, don't use anything else, use these, which is crazy.
That is actually true. I mean, and this is probably, you know, one for Meta and Google. If anybody there is listening,
Your apps are shit. They are. They're shit. And who's
I
looking
mean, it
after
is,
them?
you know, like, I mean, I feel like it is true. I mean, on the one end, you know, they're doing a service, you know, quote unquote, right, to the community by providing some sort of solution. But their solutions are not meant to be for, you know, scale ups and for brands, especially for brands who are spending like decent amount of money behind it because A is you know, it's another black box in itself, but one that you cannot control, one that you don't know what's going on, and it's broken. You know, like for the longest of times, the Google extension was not compatible with consent mode, which, you know, like it really, you know, kind of like explodes your mind to think that Google will be putting something out there that is half baked, better than nothing, true. But if on top of that they are pushing it, just like Meta, you know, and it's similar to like the Meta Pro people, right? I mean, they're just salespeople, right? I mean, they're no marketers. I mean, probably they're, you know, they might help here and there, but they're not marketers, right? I mean, and this is something that, you know, we've spoken to Meta a lot, and it's probably similar to you to the apps, right? I mean, they're putting the apps out there. They're branded, you know, like with the native channel, so you will expect that they're battle tested, and they're not. And this is the bit that, you know, it's probably the more worrisome because for a lot of people, yeah, it might work if you're getting started and you don't want to spend any money in it, or you're not spending that much money in your paid media. But the minute you start spending something meaningful, and by meaningful means something that is meaningful to you as a business and you're expecting a proper return, at that moment you probably need something better.
We spent the other day talking to a brand for about an hour that is spending 500,000 quid a month on Meta and Google, and they're using the free Shopify apps to manage their tracking, right? And I just couldn't believe it. And we did an audit on the tracking, and it's just double firing everywhere. There's missing um, all the remarketing tags are missing in Google, so they're just relying on GA4 data being sent into Google Ads to do their remarketing, which is batched over, 48, 72 hours. So it's not real time. Recency is a really important thing in terms of retargeting people, especially for this type of brand where it's like clothing brand, average order value of about 75 quid, where people are going to buy quickly. It's like I'm going on a night out, I'm looking for something, then you're retargeting them within 24 to 48 hours, and then they're going to buy something pretty quick. That's really important that you're able to get that data at least within the hour, never mind in a real time way, whatever real time really means. And, you know, but I just couldn't believe it. And then they were like, "Oh yeah, well, they seem to work fine." And I was like, "Oh, how?" And it's like, "Well, we can see the data coming into the ad account." And I was like, "What data are you looking at?" And they were like, "Well, the purchase event, and I can see add to carts." And I was like, "But that's only like the tip of the iceberg for all the data that it sends in. What about all the information about the product, about me as a customer, or my device identifiers, like all this stuff, screen size, browser, device, all this stuff that's driving the bids on the targeting." So they see me going through the platforms. I buy something, and then it can look at all that information attached to me, the products I've viewed and bought, who I am, where I am, the makeup of me as an individual, my interests and behaviors, what device I'm using, the browser, all that stuff, and ups and downs, the bids and all that, to go and get more people who look like me if I am a high intent, high value customer. But most of that stuff is just totally opaque. You can't see it in your ad account, really, um, without really digging into it. And even then, loads of it just isn't available in there. Um, More of it is available to view inside, the goals section in, say, Google or something, or Events Manager, and you can see all the parameters you can attach to it to an event in there. But these free apps and GTM, um, lots of that stuff is just missing, or it just degrades, or there's loads of technical reasons. I'm going to go over, I'll go over GTM in a second. I'm just going to list like 10 reasons. So what we've got a kind of a repository of issues that we've found with GTM and the free apps, and we keep it. And then we keep it in a place where we can just interrogate that data and say, right, over all the audits we're doing and all that, give me the top 10 issues that we've found with GTM or these free apps, right? So Google Tag Manager, I'm not going to go into what Google Tag Manager is. That's, yeah, anyway. Um,
And something before even you go into that, I mean, something, worth mentioning is that, with iOS, especially iOS, and with ad blockers, GTM specifically, the default setup, it's almost remove all in its own. Like all these ad blockers, and and Apple by itself is hindering and removing a lot of this tracking, whether you give consent or not. Like it is being affected left, right, and center. So yeah,
yeah, well, I mean, Google Tag Manager is obviously a really recognizable bit of technology for any ad blocker. Right. So if you've got your infrastructure, your tracking infrastructure run through Google Tag Manager, it's fingerprint, right? It's so recognizable by ad blockers or anything, the ITP, intelligent tracking prevention stuff and the stuff from it. It's just, and imagine you've got your server side stuff inside it as well, which is meant to be something that fires when the browser can't, yeah? So it gives you more coverage, more attribution when the browser events get blocked. Imagine it's all inside something that's just the most recognizable, solution out there for any kind of ad blockers. It just, in a lot of cases, it just blocks the entire thing. So there's loads of technical reasons. I'm not going to go like deep into the technical reasons, like our solution and what we're doing. Now I'm talking to performance marketers and e-com managers and brand owners. I'm not talking to smart ass devs out there, right? I'm talking which other solutions are for them. They can go and buy and those other solutions and they can install those other solutions, but they're not managed. They're going to get installed and then they're going to get forgotten about and they're not going to be monitored. And herein lies the problem. So you've either got these free solutions, which are meant to be great, but they're actually not. They're the worst ones on the market. And then there's some of the paid for solutions that are just not managed, right? And people they're just like, yeah, just set it up. And if we have a problem, I'll give you a bell in the future. But nobody knows when they have a problem, and it just silently degrades. So I've
yeah. The
talked about
problem
in the
the problem
past.
gets reflected by the impact on the campaign. Certainly,
Yeah, but but it's not obvious. If a purchase event broke or the value got removed, you would suddenly see no conversions on your purchase campaigns, or the ROAS would disappear, and then you go, oh, tracking's broken. But what about all the other I don't know, thousands of bits of data in that payload on the event that you can send? You would have no clue if that is degrading. Potentially if the currency changed or the value changed somewhat, or something like the product information changed a little bit, but there's so much more to it than that. But I'll go into some of the reasons for Google Tag Manager. And yeah, it's a great solution for managing tracking if you're not like an expert in this stuff. But even then, you've got to know how that works, and it's like, you've got to set it up, and then you could set up a basic. You could set up a basic version of it, but then if you go onto the server side, then yeah, you're going to need an expert in that. So Tag Manager, what we noticed, it executes after the browser has already dropped data, right? So if you use Omnibug, go in and just see how it works, and then like the Tag Manager library loading, you could just miss a whole bunch of pre-consent or anonymized data that you can legitimately collect and send to like Google Ads or um, amazing. This is a Google product as well, or GA4, and it just doesn't, and it can miss that. I think in a lot of the time and I've had to learn this over the years. There's like timing issues with this stuff and the speed at which it loads and the order in which this stuff loads can actually miss some really key events. Like someone could legitimately land on your page and click an add to cart button, and the library's just it's not loaded quick enough to kind of handle it all. So it's not a lossless solution, right? Which is what everyone's looking for in the world of conversion tracking. We're looking for a lossless solution, and lossless can mean, yeah, ad blockers. It can mean, data you're losing through iOS, consent data, but also just the way that the technology works, like how quickly it fires, how consistently it fires. What happens if someone's got a shit internet connection? What happens if there's a whole bunch of other requests they've done when they get to the site and they're just clicking a load of, like, how is that managed? If there's a bunch of other apps all loading on the page, like how is all these requests, all this stuff managed? And that's a really key point. So
Even
yeah,
even so, I don't want to say the name of this brand, but we got to audit a brand 2 Christmases ago. Massive, well-renowned brand, and their GTM was like the room of the misfit toys in many ways. Every agency and their peers that would have touched that agency,
the brand. Yeah.
I mean the brand, yeah, sorry, left this mess in that GTM. Like we've never seen a GTM as bad as that one. But again, it goes back to like the fact that nobody knows what's in there. You kind of trust that other people are doing it, and it was such a mess. It was probably the heaviest thing on the website was that GTM library, because of all the mess that was in there, and you're prompt to to breakages
That's
if
a
you're not
really
aware.
common problem with tracking. We see normally multiple pieces of tracking infrastructure installed on a site, especially Shopify. So there's always Tag Manager on there for some reason. Then there's the native apps, and there's one for Google, like the Google Shopping app. There's one for Meta. There's another one for TikTok. All of a sudden, and they're all treating these tags. They're all treating it like differently. It's not like you've just got one single source of truth where there's an event export, and then they're all treating it completely differently, rather than having a single piece of infrastructure that's just getting one event and it's just distributing that to all the various platforms, and it's making sure that the format of all the data then when it distributes it to the platforms is in the perfect format for those platforms to read that data. And there's all this stuff that when you get into it, that's just a total mess, and it's just millions of things that can go wrong. And over time, you build a robust solution, but something could come along like checkout extensibility on Shopify, or there's an update to Google Consent Mode, or Shopify pushes an update or WooCommerce to its entire site, and it just all of a sudden break something. Or like Shopify just released this thing recently where it's like, if you don't click this checkbox, we're just going to turn off the pixels that are not receiving data. And we were like, what the fuck does that even mean? And so you start clicking a bunch of checkboxes. You've no idea what clicking that checkbox does, right? But you don't want to leave it unchecked, because otherwise they could just turn off the pixels, and there's very little information gets released by
You
Shopify
have
about it.
no clue what's going on behind that
Yeah.
checkbox.
That's just so it's just
Or
mind-boggling
even
that they
Google changing parameters. I mean, this is something that we saw last year, out of the blue, not communication, and this happened twice, probably in the span of a month. Google changed the way they were sending some parameters in Google Ads, and then they changed the same for Google Analytics, and suddenly you have a gap in your data.
Yeah, that we've
And
got to go in and then just recalibrate and fix because the brands are like, why is this data missing? And we're like, yeah, that's a really good question. And we look into it and we find in the annals of history somewhere that some dev from Google's just put like a little like release note somewhere hidden in the arse end of the internet, right? 50,000 million miles under the, veneer at the top of the, and you're just like, oh yeah, they've changed the way, the format of this product information. So now we need to update it because otherwise we're not sending the right product information and brands probably aren't doing personalized remarketing. I'd love it if anyone is listening to this, go and find out on Google if you are doing personalized remarketing. Go and see, go and try and find out if that is actually happening. But most 99.999% of people out there would have zero clue if that's actually working or not, or even what drives it. On Meta, it seems to be a bit more obvious. You've got to use a very specific ad type and campaign type to do that. But behind that, like what is driving that? Well, it's the information you send from your website about your product and the person, and it matches the product and the event. So the add to cart event, then what they've added to cart, then they've got to find the person in the database of Meta who's got a Meta account who actually uses it, and then go, yeah, we'll match that stuff to them, stick them in this audience, and then retarget them with go and find those products in the product feed on the product feed IDs that you're sending to Meta have got to match the IDs that you're capturing on the pixel on the website. Then you can match then you've got to have this catalog ad. Then you've got to go and find the person and retarget them with a whatever.
and the catalog needs to be well done, and it has to be targeting the right type of catalog and everything. By the way, if anybody listening know the agency or whoever runs ads for Foot Locker, yeah, you're shit. Ring us, we'll fix it for free. I hate getting ads from Foot Locker. 'Cause every time I click on a pair of sneakers, it goes to a 404. Like, your catalog is not working. Your retargeting is not working. Also, I hate being retargeted with kids trainers, which means you're not capturing the right type of information on your end.
Yeah, great example.
I'm
Perfect
bashing,
example.
Foot Locker, but it's just I'm this close to just block them because I hate getting ads from them because
Apart
they're
from that, you
so bad.
spend shitloads of money on trainers all the time from from Foot Locker. So he's a
I
great,
don't. I mean,
great.
I spend money on trainers, but I mean, I hate being retargeted by Foot Locker because, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Seriously, I don't know who runs their ads, but whoever is doing it, your conversion tracking is broken, and your catalog is broken.
Well, it's going to be one of the big network agencies, isn't it? It's a brand that big. Yeah, the bigger they are, the shitter they seem to be, unfortunately. Anyway, just back to Google Tag Manager so people can get some just rambling about stuff here, but so they can get some real takeaways. So Tag Manager, there's issues in the way that it loads where it's just missing data on a page load, right? And so there's a whole bunch of stuff I can see here, but at some point we're going to release some information in in some kind of report on the issues that we've found, and then following that report we'll probably do something a bit more technical. We're trying to visualize this stuff and bring it to life rather than just talk about it, kind of show don't tell kind of thing. So yeah, there's issues with the way, so by the time it loads, browsers may have already blocked and stripped or failed to store key identifiers needed for attribution, essentially, right? So yeah, there's issues with the way that it fires events just based on triggers. It's not like it's measuring a journey. It's just like trigger, trigger. It doesn't really do that kind of journey kind of session mapping thing very, very well. And, managing the state across there, which makes deduplication unreliable as well. So the ID stuff, the event ID, if you fire one on the browser and one on the server, that whole deduplicate, that can get messed up very easily with these free apps in Shopify or Tag Manager. And so we just see loads of stores that are firing, duplicate events all over the place, especially on the mid funnel stuff across, GA for Meta and Google. We see that a lot. Um, Parameter loss. What's a parameter? It's something that's attached to the event. So a parameter on an add to cart or a purchase event might be the currency or the value or a customer ID or an email, my email or whatever. Like there's loads of stuff, or the product information, the product ID. Those parameters, those are the things. That's what we talk about when we talk about richness. It's richness of the additional data, product and customer data that is attached to the event data, right? And inside GTM, it's much harder to enrich that data with external first-party data. That's a much more difficult thing. If you have a tracking infrastructure sitting outside GTM, we can fully control the consent status, which is also a nightmare inside GTM. We can fully control other bits of information that we can legitimately gather and attach to the payload on the event and enrich it and help it match with more people. And that's the game, really. What else have we got? Yeah, the consent stuff, just to go back to that. GTM could just, if someone opts out of tracking, often GTM will just go, right, we'll just block everything. And this is Google Tag Manager, but Google Ads in GA4, you can send anonymized data legitimately, pre-consent data to these platforms, right? That's what Google Consent Mode is for. It's to help manage the privacy status and legitimately collect data, and that doesn't have consent, anonymize it, and then send it to Google Ads for modeling and GA4 to improve attribution and improve data accuracy. It just won't attach it to an individual, a unique individual, but it can use all this anonymized data to drive bidding and drive targeting. It just probably won't add you to a retargeting audience, or it won't say, yeah, this person is this age in this location. It'll just model your data on the information it can see from people who've been given consent. But GTM often just goes, no, computer says no, we'll just block all that. And that's an issue that we see frequently. I think I've mentioned that the same event, instead of a single event just being fired and then being distributed, a lot of the time it's just different events and different, it's not using just a single source of truth. Mention the enrichment stuff. Yeah, front end architectures. So what do we mean by that? So, and Gil will be able to speak about this much better than I can, but like single page apps, they're a major problem, because what that means is it's not relying on a page load, and GTM is very attached to like a page load, right? Just this single page, and you'll go to a collection and you go to a product page, and it's not reloading a page or something. It's just these single page applications. They cause also, and probably the bigger and more sophisticated and more money the brand has, the more likely they are to use these types of things. And that can cause all sorts of problems in, deduplicating events, just with the general session and attaching that. It's like I don't know, it's almost like it goes into some mad twilight zone or something, causes all sorts of issues. And when we see single page applications, they're normally like a headless thing as well. So you've got then the front end is detached from the back end. So you might have Shopify on the back end, and you might have something else, whatever it is, on the front end, and then actually having the data being able to jump across that gap and maintain the consent status of the user, stitch that session together and across those two different things. GTM really struggles with that. The standard Shopify apps, they're really going to struggle with that, but they're not going to be able to do it. Basically, it's just going to exist on the checkout. Then you'd have something else on the front. It's just, there's so much stuff that GTM and these other apps are just, they're like the blunt instruments. I know GTM can be, it can be surgical with where you're putting the events and how you're triggering it, but the pretty blunt instruments meant for ease of operational management rather than fidelity, abundance, accuracy, richness, and reliability of the data. Really, it's about management of the infrastructure. And another one we've noticed, a really key one, um, Google Tag Manager optimizes just like firing the tag. Yeah, there's the trigger. There's the trigger. It's not optimized for algorithmic bidding and learning. Like that's what our solution is built for. We're performance 15 years plus in performance marketing. How do we control the data that is driving the algorithmic bidding that you cannot control from within an ad account? Yeah, you can give some search terms or some interests or exclude an audience or add an audience in, but by and large, the vast amount of the bidding that's being done is automated, right? So how do we really control that? And you control that by the data that is provided to the algorithm by your website, by conversion tracking for bidding, and it's all in this payload on the event inside GTM or inside those free apps, the free apps in Shopify. You've got zero control over that, and they're basic. They're not sophisticated. So everyone's like, yeah, yeah, we've got Cape. So what? Everyone's got Cape. We've got Cape, 10x Cape. Like we're augmenting Cape. We call it Cape Plus, right? We're augmenting it with all sorts of stuff, and we're managing the cookie consent, the compliance stuff, the request of the brand, however compliant they want to be. And then we're managing the Google consent mode and all that wrapped together. And then we're managing the monitoring, automated monitoring every day. All the network requests on the tracking are all watched. All these parameters are watched. If anything breaks, we fix it straight away, rather than what normally happens is all these parameters just degrade and disappear and become inaccurate over time. So when you get from a year later, you've probably had millions of parameters that have either been missed or sent incorrectly. And imagine what that's doing just to the general efficiency of the system, especially if you're spending tens of hundreds of millions of pounds a
And I feel
month
like that's the
in
thing, right? I mean,
paid media.
something that we've seen is, the more money that you invest, and you made, I know you made a passing comment in just, about the big network agencies, but some of the worst setups we've seen are actually coming from the big network agencies. And it's probably because of the sheer complexity of managing something like this, but also the fact that you need to be on top of it, and having the right sort of solutions.
But
We were
also,
talking,
a lot of them they're generalists, aren't they? A lot of the time in
yeah,
some
but
of this
they're not being
stuff.
paid for being generalists, right? I mean, at the end of the day, whether they are, I mean, but that's not what they've been paid for, right? I mean, and I feel like, like you need to be really in control of what you're doing and also being on top of it. I mean, we've seen it, especially over the last couple of weeks, with a lot of the changes that has been going on, in the meta world, and in this kind of like out of the blue change of settings Shopify brought for the pixels. But it's such a fickle infrastructure that can be easily be uh, be screwed with. Like just as we are starting the new year, like something that we're working with, the portfolio brands on the platform is mapping out updates to their platforms. And the bigger the brand, the more control they have on updates on, on websites, and, like the rollout of changes, because the minimum of changes can have an effect on your conversion. Now, obviously, we have Watcher, and Watcher is constantly checking and monitoring, the health of the conversion tracking on the website, not on the server, but actually on the website, and making sure that things are the way they should be doing. And if for whatever reason it misses the bit, it alerts our team to go and fix it. But that's the bare minimum that I feel like expectations it should be. To your point, there are solutions out there that require a developer to go and either set up the server, set up make the connection, make everything. But once it's set up, it's kind of like left to rot, in many ways, with the expectation that it remains there. And every channel and everything is making changes constantly, right? I mean, there are new parameters, there are new ways of sending information, new opportunities of enrichment. First party now is the new thing, quote unquote. I mean, I know Google is trying to push everybody to move into that. I mean, like luckily, All of our clients have that out of the box with Signal. But and we've seen the impact. We've seen the impact on the quality of EMQs. We're seeing the impact in the protectness of the signal. Uh, but this is only.
UTM data, channel attribution data in GA4. First part is, yeah, just much better for that. It's better for general attribution into the ad accounts, but most brands don't have a clue. They're like, oh yeah, I've got CAPI. And you're like, that doesn't mean it's first party. That's just a server. And I think that the language around this whole
And there is
thing
information that is
is
still
really
required
opaque.
from that browser session. A lot of people think it's like, oh, I don't need anything from the browser. I can
No, no,
send
it's
everything from the
crucial.
server. Like
Yeah,
it's
yeah, it's
you
absolutely
need
crucial.
that bit, like you need still, that browser session and you need the handshake. And yeah, server alone is it's something, but it's not bulletproof. You still need that on
No,
browser
without the browser, yeah,
information.
you're going to be losing loads of critical information needed to make this stuff work. Whether that browser information is then first party or third party is a different kettle of fish. But yeah, I mean, just to wrap this up, I mean, the language is so opaque around this. I'm not a developer. Like I can't write code. I struggle to even, and I've been in this game a long time, but I'd struggle to even visualize browser, server, like what happens. I'm sure a developer, and someone who's been through whatever, a PhD in this stuff, they've got it all visualized and mapped out in their brain how it works. And it goes, oh yeah, this goes here, it's transformed here, it's sent here. Like it's very, very difficult, almost impossible for a non-developer to imagine and understand how that works. And I'm 15 years in the game. So for a brand owner, he's just like, what's this conversion tracking shit again? Do you know what I mean? I've got like a brand to run, and it's just so difficult. But most brands aren't investing in conversion tracking, and I hear all the time, yeah, it's not in the budget. What do you mean it's not in the budget? Like you're spending
Or
money.
it's not at the
It
top of
is.
my priorities.
Yeah, it's not in the top of my priorities. Great, insane. It should be for anyone spending paid media, decent paid media, north of 20 grand a month, right? Below that, you probably can't afford our solution, but north of 20, 30 grand a month, right? Serious amount of money, really, right? In the grand scheme of things. Um, you should be investing in paid media. Otherwise, it's almost like, especially if you're a director, that's against your fiduciary duties as a director of a company to not invest in that because it's you're going right. I'm going to spend £1 on paid media, and I'm going to get £3 back. Happy with that? No, but what if you could be getting like £3.10 back by investing another penny in your conversion tracking? That's what this thing does. It's not like a nice to have. It's an essential driver of profitability on paid media spend. And it boggles my mind how people say it's not at the top of the list of my priorities. As a performance marketer and a paid media manager, it should be the number one thing. Number one, without question. There isn't another thing that takes priority, and that is a fact. It's not opinion. And then um, yeah, it's not in the budget. No, it is in the budget because you're already losing the money. We're stopping you losing as much money on paid media. It's already in the budget. You're already just throwing money away. So you're just going, right, I'm going to spend some good money after bad to make more good money. Like this is, and it's just, yeah, I'll keep banging this drum forever because 99% of brands aren't investing in it, and it's just,
And that's the like that's the so the sad landscape. And maybe it is why Google and Meta are being shit by pushing these little apps in front of everybody goes into the because they're not doing it. So I mean that's probably like the bare minimum. But if you're putting the decent amount of money, I mean you really need a team, or a strong solution, and and a partner that really is on top of it. Whether that's us or whether that's somebody,
yeah.
I was talking to somebody recently. Like we we fixed the setup for a brand, on top of a slightly different solution than ours, knowing on their view that it was going to break. And it's like, but like we have to go with what we have to go, and we fix it. And it's like, why would you fix it? I was like, because at the end of the day, what we want is for you to stop wasting money. Now, obviously, like ideally, you will go with our solution because we know it's best. But at worst, just be on top of it and be mindful. Like be aware that this is something that you should be on top of, and that at the bare minimum you should be monitoring it closely, because it will break. It's not an if; it's more of a when. And what you want to do is minimize the impact of when it breaks. Changes, especially these days, are happening every single month, every single day. Just as Facebook is changing, their algorithmic way of of attracting people or not, like those changes get then trickle down to tracking information. Uh, so you really want to make sure that you're on top of. I mean, this is a bit of a landscape. You have the free apps, you have GTM, you have the solutions out there that are there for your developer to set up. Fortunately, they will break. Um, we wish, when we approached this, we thought this would be the way of doing things, and like really we're not doing this because we're maniacs. We're doing it because there is nothing out there really that does this, and we needed it, for ourselves and for the brands that we work with, and we're kind of like now doing a bit of a public service notice with this because of how bad it is.
Yeah. So I mean, last last word on this really. Investing in tracking is pretty much guaranteed to make you more money from paid media, and it's as simple as that.
Yeah. So with that, guys, I mean, I hope this rumble has been good. Again, if you're connected to Foot Locker, people, send her our way. We'll fix your tracking. You're wasting a lot of money and making a lot of prospective customers mad. But with that, guys, this is the Leaf Colectivo. It's really good to be back despite the gloomy weather. We hope you learn a thing or two, or at least we drum on a beat on a drum that it's close to your heart. Yeah, if you need justification, send your CFO. We'll have a chat with him. We'll show him the numbers. But seriously,
Or
be on top of it. All right, take it easy, guys. Have a good one.
cheers.
Bye.